In this video, I'm going to talk you through the process of how I made pickles this summer, and at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you what I did wrong and how you can fix it. So the first thing I learned is you should only pickle cucumbers with specific pickling cucumbers because other ones will go mushy. It's really important to pick them fresh and then deal with them immediately. You need to wash them to get all those little spiky bits off and then cut off the flowering tip. The flowering tip actually contains an enzyme that makes the cucumber go riper and more soggy, so you cut that off and that stops that process. You then need to make a salty brine. I kind of eyeballed the amount of water to salt here. Make sure it's nice and cold before putting the cucumbers in there to chill for at least 12 hours. And you can leave them in there for up to 7 days. So if you're not ready to make pickles straight away, that's a really helpful tip because we have busy lives and we're not always immediately ready to make pickles when they are ready to be picked. You need to sterilize your jars. I don't have a dishwasher, so I'm doing it in boiling water here. For the brine, I used equal parts water and vinegar, and then a little bit of salt and about a tablespoon of sugar per jar that I'm making because I like them a little bit sweet. You mix that all together in the pot, bring it to the boil and set that aside to when you're ready to fill the jars. Once you've sterilized your jars and your brine is ready, you need to work quite quickly to get everything into the jars while it's still hot. Here I'm adding dill, garlic and peppercorns, but I've also just added dill and something called pickling spice, which you can get from the shops and has a whole lot of different flavors in it. I think you can choose your own adventure in terms of the flavors you want to add. If your cucumbers aren't fitting in the jars, it's fine to chop them up. You can pickle them as little slices if you want, or I'm going for just quarters because that was easier to fit them all in. Pour the pickling liquid into the jars and make sure there's no bubbles when you do this. Jiggle them around and get all the air bubbles out. Make sure you've also sterilized your lids. I'm using 2-part lids here, which are like proper canning lids. And you want to try and keep all of the pickles underneath the liquid and leave a little bit of air gap at the top of the jar. I haven't always managed this, so we'll see how well they store because of that. Once you've filled the jars, you need to put the lids back on tight, but not too tight, because there does need to be some air that will escape during the water bathing process. Your water should be at 180 degrees Fahrenheit or 82 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes, and this will complete the sterilizing and sealing process of the jars. During the cooling process, you should hear some nice little popping sounds, which is very satisfying, and that means that the jar has properly sealed and the lids have popped down. And that means that you've now got a shelf-stable jar of pickles. You should wipe the outside of the jar and then remove the outer band, or just wipe the outside of the jar. And then make sure you label and date it and pop it in the pantry. That's how I made pickles this year. So if you've done all that and you go to open a jar and you find out they're too salty, which is what I did very recently and was most upset about, I recommend you pour out half or 3/4 of the brine and replace it with fresh water. A process called osmosis, which we learn about in school, will pull all of the extra salt that's in the pickles out into the water, and it will stop your pickles from being too salty, because I realized that I think the brine that I set them in overnight was far too salty. Not good, trust me, they're really bad if they're too salty. So it is fixable. I have 34 jars that are probably all gonna be too salty, but I will be doing this method and I'm intent on eating them all. So there you go, thank you internet. It's all a learning process, you know? I'm glad I had this experience. If you like this video, please share it and subscribe. It's a little different to my usual. Well, I don't really have a usual at this point, so it is what it is, it's pickles. You're welcome. This is what I've been doing a lot of over the summer. Thanks for watching, bye. Oh, that's too bright.